All right, listeners, buckle up, because we are diving head first into the captivating world of Berthe de Courrière.
An artist's model in late 19th century Paris, you say. But hold on, we're not talking about just any model here.
Right.
We're talking about a woman connected to some of the biggest names in art and literature of the time. This is going to be good.
Get ready for scandal, intrigue, and maybe even a little bit of the occult.
It's all there.
So let's unpack this, shall we? Why was Berthe de Courrière such a captivating figure? And, maybe even more interesting, why did some try to erase her from history completely?
Well, to really understand Berthe, you have to understand the world she lived in.
Okay, so paint us a picture. What was Paris like in the late 1800s?
Imagine, if you will, Paris in the throes of the Belle Epoque. A time of immense change, really. You have this exciting new movement of new women challenging traditional roles, a fascination with the occult bubbling just beneath the surface, and rapid industrialization completely transforming the city.
Wow, what a time to be alive. So
Yeah.
Berthe walks into this whirlwind of change.
She jumps right in, and she
Right.
definitely makes a splash.
That's putting it mildly. I mean, Bigfoot Bertha, that's quite a nickname. What does that tell us about her, especially in a society, let's be honest, obsessed with this idealized image of the feminine?
Well, it's not exactly subtle, is it?
Not at all.
It speaks to her, let's just say, striking physical presence. She really defied those narrow standards of beauty of the time. You know, back then, women's bodies were often either idealized as, like, delicate flowers or demonized as hysterical and, well, dangerous.
Right.
Bertha, though, she wasn't having any of it.
She was a walking, breathing challenge to the status quo. And then there's this whole relationship with Auguste Clésinger, the famous sculptor. I mean, he uses her as a model for Marianne, the symbol of France. And all while she's also his mistress. That's audacious, even for that time period, don't you think?
It really does expose the hypocrisy, right? Here's
Yeah.
this celebrated artist engaging in a relationship that publicly would have been condemned, and yet he chooses Bertha to represent the nation's highest ideals.
Mhm.
It's almost comical when you think about it.
It's like a secret hidden in plain sight. And then, to top it all off, she inherits his wealth after his death. Talk about a power move.
A huge inheritance, too. This gave her a level of financial independence that most women couldn't even dream of. She was free to live life on her own terms, and it really solidified her status among the bohemians of the time.
So it's clear Bertha was a woman who really knew how to captivate, but I get the sense that it wasn't just her looks or even her newfound wealth that drew people to her.
You're right, there's something much deeper there.
And you've uncovered a lot about her relationships with some of the most influential men of that time, like the writer Remy de Gourmont. What do we know about their connection? It feels like it went way beyond a typical love affair.
It definitely wasn't your average love story. I mean, just think about how they met. Berthe initially sought out Gourmont to write Clésinger's biography.
Oh, that's right. I'd forgot about that.
But from there, their connection, well, it really blossomed into something quite unique for that era.
And not just his muse, right? Didn't she become his business manager, too? That's practically unheard of in the late 19th century.
It was,
Yeah.
in those days. Almost impossible. So it really makes you think, it speaks to a level of trust and partnership, a genuine meeting of minds that you just didn't see between men and women back then.
Especially in that world.
Exactly. Bertha, I think she was way too smart to ever be content with simply being someone's muse.
Right.
She was an active participant in shaping Gourmand's career. She managed his finances. She was a force to be reckoned with, challenging societal expectations every step of the way.
It's almost like you can just imagine them sitting in a smoky cafe, bouncing ideas off of each other.
Oh, absolutely. And speaking of these fascinating characters she's surrounded by, we can't overlook another literary giant drawn into her orbit, Joris Karl Huysmans.
It's all connected, isn't it? And his novel, Là-bas, it really captures that dark, mysterious allure of the occult, doesn't it?
Yes. And who does he base one of his most memorable characters on? Madame Chantelouve. None other than Berthe de Courrière.
That's right, I'd almost forgotten. But it wasn't just a passing mention, was it?
It's not. Not at all. Madame Chantelouve, she's a force of nature. A woman who embodies both sensuality and intellect, someone who dives headfirst into the occult and basically throws out the rulebook of what it meant to be a woman in that time. And to really understand the scope of Berthe's impact, we have to consider what their contemporary, the writer Jean Lorrain, said about this. He said, and I quote, "There was no brasserie in Montmartre or studio in Montparnasse. where a little model with eyes dilated by morphine and ether did not rise at the mere mention of Huysmans' name to exclaim, Chantelouve, that's me.
Wow, they want it to be her. That's incredible. So we're talking about a fictional character based on Bertha becoming this powerful symbol, almost larger than life.
Exactly. I mean, it reminds me of today, how people latch onto characters from books, movies, video games. They see themselves in them. They're looking for that spark, that essence of someone who is completely and totally authentically themselves.
Living life on their own terms. I love that.
And that's what Bertha, maybe unknowingly, really embodied. Through Chantelouve, she becomes this icon of rebellion, a representation of this burgeoning feminist movement, the yearning for a different way of being a woman.
It's fascinating how those themes, even now, still resonate with people. So we've got a woman who challenges the norms with her appearance, forges this powerful partnership with one of the leading writers of the time, and then becomes the inspiration for this iconic literary figure. But this is where I think things take a bit of a turn, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, things get a little bit darker, maybe even a bit more mysterious here. It's stuff about birth and the occult. Well, it's pretty fascinating. It's easy to see how, in an era obsessed with spiritualism and symbolism, someone like Bertha, always pushing boundaries, might find themselves drawn to the mysteries of the occult.
Right, but we're talking more than just dabbling here, right? There are those who considered her almost a devotee to the dark arts. And there's that story about her feeding communion wafers to dogs. I mean, even for a free spirit like Bertha, that's pretty wild.
It's definitely a powerful image, right? But if you place it in the context of the time, it becomes less about shock value, although she probably enjoyed that, and more about Bertha making a statement.
Because
Now remember, in 19th century France, the church, it held a lot of power.
influenced everything.
It really did, especially when it came to dictating morality and, for women in particular.
So you're saying that by using a sacred symbol, the communion wafer, in such a, let's just say, unexpected way, she was kind of giving a nod to the hypocrisy she saw within the established order of the day.
Exactly. It was about reclaiming power, taking it back from the institution that tried to control women's lives. Birth makes us think about how what might seem shocking or even outrageous is often a reaction to, well, deeper societal forces at play.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. And then there's the incident in Bruges. Things get even more unsettling. What happened there?
It's one of those historical moments that's shrouded in mystery. What we do know is that Berthe is found wandering, clearly distraught, near the home of a priest who, and this is important, may have had a less than stellar reputation himself.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The details of what exactly happened are still unclear. But whatever it was, it led to Berthe being institutionalized.
Wow. Do we know if she actually was mentally unstable, like they claimed, or was there maybe something more going on?
It's impossible to say for sure. We're missing a lot of information, and, back then, a woman who was outspoken, who challenged the rules, well, there was a very real possibility that she would be labeled as, how do they put it, hysterical, just for not conforming.
Right, put her away, get her out of sight.
Exactly. So we have to at least consider that possibility, right? That those in power wanted her silenced.
It's a sad thought, but not uncommon. Poor Bertha. So what happens to her? How does her story end?
So even with the scandals, even with the whispers, Bertha never stops writing. Her later work, it's not as well known, but it gives us this glimpse, this peek into her inner world. Bertha eventually passes away in 1916, and guess what? She's buried with both Clésinger and Gourmont.
Wow, really?
I know. It makes you think about the impact those relationships had on her life.
It really does. But, as you pointed out in your research, there's that one, well, sad detail. Her name, it's not on the tomb. It's like she's been erased, even in death.
It's a powerful image, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it says a lot about how history remembers women, often on terms that are dictated by others. Berthe de Courrière was this woman of contradictions, a muse who defied expectations, a rebel. She challenged everything. People celebrated her, but they also feared her.
It really makes you think. And it makes you wonder how many other Berthas are out there. Women whose stories haven't been told, whose voices we haven't heard yet. This has been an incredible deep dive, and I want to thank you for bringing Berthe de Courrière to life for us. To our listeners, keep asking those questions. Keep digging for those lost stories, because who knows what you might find.